There's a war that killed 17 million people, destroyed 4 empires, and created the conditions for an even deadlier conflict 20 years later. It started because nobody knew what anyone else was planning. Intelligence agencies were gentlemen spies reading each other's mail. Communication took days. Decisions were made in information blackouts that lasted weeks. And 17 million people died because leaders were flying blind. In June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo by a 19-year-old with a pistol. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany mobilized to support Austria-Hungary. France mobilized because they were allied with Russia. Britain joined because Germany invaded Belgium. Within 6 weeks, the entire continent was at war, and nobody wanted it. Nobody planned it. It just happened, because nobody knew what anyone else was doing until it was too late to stop. In July 1914, the German Kaiser sent a telegram to his cousin, the Russian Tsar, literally begging him to stop mobilizing troops. Willie to Nicky. It was called Mass, 2 cousins trying to prevent war through personal letters. The Tsar wanted to stop. The Kaiser wanted to stop. But their militaries were already moving. Millions of soldiers were boarding trains. And once mobilization started, the general said it couldn't be stopped without leaving the country defenseless. 2 men with absolute power couldn't stop a war they didn't want because they didn't have information fast enough to make different decisions. In August 1914, Britain entered the war thinking it would be over by Christmas. They had no intelligence on German military capacity, no understanding of trench warfare's implications, no concept of industrial-scale slaughter. The British Foreign Secretary said, "The lamps are going out all over Europe." He had no idea they'd stay out for 4 years and kill a generation. All because nobody knew what was actually happening until it was too late. But here's what should terrify you about how World War I started. It wasn't inevitable. It wasn't the result of grand strategy or calculated aggression. It was a catastrophic failure of information, rumors, and intelligence that was days or weeks old. They didn't know what allies were doing. They didn't even know what their own militaries were capable of. And 17 million people died in a war that started because everyone was operating blind. A modern intelligence agency, the CIA, MI6, Mossad, with 2025 technology operating in 1914, could have prevented the entire disaster. Not through military force, not through diplomacy, just through information. This is exactly how modern intelligence could have stopped World War I. Why the information gap was the real cause of the catastrophe, and why every decision that led to war was made by people who literally didn't know what they were deciding. Let me explain how catastrophically bad intelligence was in 1914. This isn't an exaggeration. This is how decisions that killed millions were actually made. Communication speed was measured in days. When Austria-Hungary sent an ultimatum to Serbia on July 23rd, it took 3 days for other European capitals to even know about it. By the time diplomats could respond, Austria had already declared war. Imagine making decisions about war and peace when you find out about crises 72 hours after they happen. That's not intelligence. That's reading last week's newspaper. There was no signals intelligence. Radio existed but wasn't widely used for military communication. Encrypted communications didn't exist. Intelligence agencies literally steamed open letters and read telegrams at telegraph offices. That was the cutting edge of spycraft. You want to know what Germany is planning? Hope they send a telegram you can intercept. Otherwise, you're guessing. There was no satellite imagery. Nobody could see troop movements until they were already happening. When Russia mobilized 6 million soldiers, Germany found out because their border guards saw trains full of troops. Not from spies, not from intelligence, from guards literally watching soldiers arrive at the border. By then it was too late to stop. Human intelligence was a joke. The best spies of 1914 were military attachés attending social events and trying to overhear conversations. Literally, The intelligence community was aristocrats at parties, hoping someone got drunk and said something useful. That was the intelligence apparatus that was supposed to prevent world war. But here's the catastrophic part. Leaders didn't know they didn't know. They made confident decisions based on terrible intelligence because they had no concept of how much they were missing. Austria thought Russia wouldn't mobilize. Russia thought Germany was bluffing. Germany thought France would stay neutral. Britain thought it would be over quickly. Everyone was wrong, and nobody had information good enough to know they were wrong until millions were already dead. Now imagine dropping the CIA into June 1914, not to fight, not to change policy, just to provide information. Watch how differently everything plays out when leaders actually know what's happening. Satellite surveillance sees the assassination plot before it happens. Gavrilo Princip and his co-conspirators met multiple times to plan the attack. They purchased weapons. They traveled to Sarajevo. Modern surveillance, satellite imagery, signals intelligence, human sources would have identified the conspiracy within days of it forming. The CIA's counterterrorism division tracks thousands of potential threats globally. 7 teenagers planning to kill an archduke in a city of 50,000 people. That's Tuesday. Franz Ferdinand security gets a detailed threat assessment. High probability assassination attempt during Sarajevo visit. 7 conspirators identified. Weapons sourced from Serbian military intelligence. Attack likely during motorcade through city center. The Archduke either cancels the trip or the route gets changed. Either way, he doesn't die. The spark that ignited World War I never happens. But let's say the assassination still occurs. Modern intelligence changes everything that follows. The messages are explicit. We will use this incident to crush Serbia permanently. This intelligence gets shared with Britain, France, and Russia within hours. Everyone knows Austria is planning aggressive war before Austria even sends the ultimatum. Russia considers mobilization. NSA intercepts show Russian military leadership discussing full mobilization to defend Serbia. The Tsar hasn't decided yet, but the plans are ready. Germany gets this intelligence in real time. Instead of finding out when Russian troops appear at the border, Germany knows exactly what Russia is planning days before it happens. This creates time for diplomacy that didn't exist historically. Germany activates the Schlieffen Plan. This was Germany's strategy. If Russia mobilizes, Germany must attack France through Belgium before France can mobilize. Then turn around and fight Russia. It sounds insane, and it was, but Germany believed they had no choice. Modern intelligence reveals this plan to Britain and France before Germany executes it. Everyone understands Germany's thinking. They're not being aggressive. They're following a rigid plan they believe is their only option for survival. Britain debates joining the war. Historically, Britain entered because Germany invaded Belgium. But with modern intelligence, Britain knows Germany's Schlieffen Plan requires invading Belgium days before it happens. Britain can make ultimatums, threaten intervention, and make Germany's decision calculus completely different before German troops cross the border. Here's what changes with real-time intelligence. Instead of everyone reacting to events days or weeks after they happen, everyone knows what everyone else is planning before they do it. The Tsar knows Austria's ultimatum to Serbia is designed to provoke war before the ultimatum is sent. Germany knows Russia is planning mobilization before Russia mobilizes. France knows Germany's plan to attack through Belgium before German troops move. Britain knows all of this is coming and can threaten consequences before anyone commits to irreversible actions. The information gap disappears. So does the war. Let me show you exactly how modern intelligence prevents World War I through 3 specific interventions. Not speculation, actionable intelligence that changes decisions. Intervention 1. Exposing Austria's war plans, July 1914. Austria-Hungary's Emperor Franz Joseph and his military wanted war with Serbia for years. The assassination gave them the excuse. They drafted an ultimatum designed to be unacceptable. 10 demands Serbia couldn't possibly accept, knowing rejection would justify invasion. Modern signals intelligence intercepts the internal Austrian discussions, not speculation about intent, actual recorded conversations of Austrian leadership saying, "We're designing this ultimatum to be rejected so we can invade." The CIA gets these recordings to Britain, France, and Russia before Austria sends the ultimatum. Now everyone knows this isn't about justice for the assassination. It's planned aggression using the assassination as cover. Russia can't defend Serbia's rejection of the ultimatum because everyone knows the ultimatum was designed to be rejected. International pressure on Austria becomes enormous. Britain and France publicly condemn Austrian aggression before it happens. Russia tells Austria, "We know this is a setup. The world knows. If you invade Serbia, you're isolated." Austria faces a choice: invade Serbia and fight alone against Russia with no support, or back down. Historically, Austria thought Germany would support them, and Russia would back down. Modern intelligence reveals the opposite. Germany is nervous about escalation. Russia is definitely mobilizing. With real information instead of assumptions, Austria backs down. The ultimatum gets modified. Serbia accepts with minor reservations. Crisis averted. Intervention 2, breaking Germany's rigid war plan. Late July 1914, Germany's Schlieffen Plan was military insanity masquerading as strategy. The plan said, if Russia mobilizes, we must immediately attack France through Belgium, defeat France in 40 days, then turn around and fight Russia. Mobilization meant attack. Attack meant invading Belgium. Invading Belgium meant Britain entered the war. Modern intelligence does two things. First, it reveals to Germany that the Schlieffen Plan's assumptions are fantasy. The plan assumed France would collapse in 40 days. CIA analysis of French military capacity, defensive positions, and mobilization speed proves France won't collapse quickly. The entire plan is based on a timeline that won't work. Second, intelligence shows Germany that Britain will definitely enter the war if Belgium is invaded. Historically, Germany gambled that Britain would stay neutral. Kaiser Wilhelm thought Britain wouldn't fight over a scrap of paper, the treaty guaranteeing Belgian neutrality. Modern intelligence intercepts British cabinet discussions explicitly stating, if Germany invades Belgium, we declare war immediately. Germany knows, not guesses, knows that invading Belgium means fighting Britain, France, and Russia simultaneously. The math becomes impossible. Germany's plan requires defeating France quickly before Russia fully mobilizes. But intelligence proves France won't be defeated quickly. And invading France means Britain joins, making German victory impossible. With actual information instead of hopeful assumptions, German military leadership tells the Kaiser, the Schlieffen Plan doesn't work. We need a different strategy. Germany pivots to defensive strategy. Instead of attacking France, Germany proposes international mediation of the Austria-Serbia crisis. They still mobilize defensively, but don't invade anyone. France does the same. Russia slows mobilization. Everyone's still armed and angry, but nobody attacks because the information shows attacks won't achieve their objectives. Intervention 3. Giving leaders an off-ramp. Early August 1914. Mobilization was happening across Europe. Millions of soldiers were boarding trains. The crisis was escalating, but nobody had actually attacked yet. There was still time to stop, if leaders knew how. The problem was psychological and informational. Every leader believed that stopping mobilization meant leaving their country defenseless while enemies continued mobilizing. They were trapped in a prisoner's dilemma: cooperate and risk betrayal, or defect and guarantee war. They chose war because they didn't trust the information environment. Modern intelligence solves this with verification. The CIA offers to serve as neutral verifier of coordinated debt escalation. Here's the plan. Everyone stops mobilizing simultaneously. We'll verify compliance with real-time satellite imagery and signals intelligence. Nobody can cheat because we're watching everything. This creates trust where none existed. The Tsar doesn't have to trust the Kaiser's promises. He trusts CIA satellite photos showing German troops returning to barracks. The Kaiser doesn't have to trust France. He trusts NSA intercepts showing French mobilization orders being cancelled. Britain doesn't have to wonder about Germany's intentions. They have real-time intelligence on German troop movements. Coordinated demobilization happens over 48 hours. Everyone steps back simultaneously with verification. The crisis de-escalates. Diplomats have time to negotiate. The Austria-Serbia dispute goes to international mediation. Cooler heads prevail because information enables trust that didn't exist before. You might think, I'm being optimistic. Intelligence wouldn't have stopped determined leaders from wanting war. But here's the thing. In 1914, leaders didn't want war. Not really. The Kaiser didn't want to fight his cousin. The Tsar didn't want to destroy his country. British leadership thought war would be economic catastrophe. With intelligence showing the plan wouldn't work, they would have found a different strategy. They weren't suicidal. They were trapped by bad assumptions and rigid plans. Russia wanted to protect Serbia but didn't want war with Germany. The Tsar was weak, his economy was fragile, and he knew war risked revolution, which actually happened 3 years later. With intelligence showing a path to protect Serbia without war, he would have taken it. Britain wanted to avoid continental war entirely. They only joined because Germany invaded Belgium and British leadership felt obligated by treaty. With intelligence showing Belgium wouldn't be invaded, Britain stays neutral and uses that neutrality to pressure everyone to de-escalate. The war happened because of information failures, not because war was inevitable. Leaders made terrible decisions because they were operating blind. Real-time intelligence, and they make different decisions. Not better decisions because they're smarter. Better decisions because they know what they're deciding. If modern intelligence prevents World War I, what happens instead? Let me paint the picture of what you save. 17 million lives. Not hypothetical, actual human beings who died in trenches, gas attacks, artillery bombardments, and starvation. They live. They have families. An entire generation isn't destroyed. 4 empires don't collapse. Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, Russian Empire, German Empire, all gone by 1918. The collapse created power vacuums, border disputes, and ethnic conflicts that still cause wars today. With no World War I, these empires declined gradually rather than collapsing catastrophically. The Middle East doesn't get carved up by colonial powers. Eastern Europe doesn't descend into chaos. The world is fundamentally more stable. The Treaty of Versailles never happens. The punitive peace treaty that humiliated Germany, crashed their economy, and created the conditions for Hitler's rise doesn't exist. No Cold War, the entire catastrophic 20th century might not happen. But here's what's really staggering. World War I didn't just kill 17 million people. It created the conditions for World War II, which killed 70 million. It created the Soviet Union, which killed tens of millions through purges and famine. It created the Middle East's modern borders, which have caused endless conflicts. The cascade of consequences from 1914 shaped everything about the modern world, almost all of it terrible. Modern intelligence preventing World War I doesn't just save 17 million lives in 1914 to 1918. It potentially prevents 100 million deaths across the 20th century. It prevents the Holocaust. It prevents Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It prevents Stalin's purges. It prevents decades of Middle East conflicts, all because information enables leaders to see what their decisions actually mean before those decisions become irreversible. World War I proves something terrifying. Catastrophic decisions don't require evil leaders or aggressive intentions. They just require information failures bad enough that well-meaning people make choices they don't understand. The leaders of 1914 weren't monsters. They were normal people trapped in a system that gave them terrible information and demanded immediate decisions. They did what they thought was necessary based on what they knew. They just didn't know nearly enough. Modern intelligence would have changed that. Not through force, not through manipulation, just through information, showing leaders what would actually happen if they followed their current plans, giving them real-time data instead of assumptions, creating trust through verification instead of hoping for good faith. Could a modern spy agency prevent World War I? Completely, decisively. The war started because everyone was flying blind. Modern intelligence turns on the lights. You don't walk off cliffs. The 17 million people who died in World War I didn't die because war was inevitable. They died because information moved too slowly and intelligence was too primitive for leaders to understand what they were choosing. Give those leaders 2025 intelligence capabilities, and they make different choices. Better choices. Choices that save millions of lives and prevent the worst century in human history. That's the power of information. Not to control people, not to manipulate outcomes, just to let people see clearly enough to avoid catastrophes they don't even want. World War I was the most preventable disaster in human history. All it needed was information, and that's the one thing 1914 didn't have.